Welcome to Connecting the Dots, the podcast where we share our stories from the battlefield of consulting. Today I'm joined by the co-founders of Expero, Sebastian Good and Lynn Fossick. I guess we'll start off with asking you guys your thoughts on how running a consultancy is different than running, say, like a software product company.
Great question. How is software product company different than consulting? So there's so many different angles that you could attack this from. When I think of first and foremost, I guess being a consultant, what makes it exciting for me is that people come in with all sorts of different challenges all the time. It could be a technology challenge, it could be a design challenge, it could be a challenge within a specific industry because there's some shakeup going on and some disruption, right? They want to take advantage of. So you never know kind of from one day to the next, like what you're going to focus on necessarily, what the challenge is going to be versus a product company, which is equally exciting to have this like mission where everybody's focused on like, the same context or the same set of things. And when you do consulting, you kind of have that across, sometimes it's a sector or you align across a technology or a skill set, but you also have this other layer of like kind of this excitement of like, what's going to happen next? Who's going to come through the door, and how are we going to pivot and, work on something different. So that's one perspective. There's lots of different ways to slice and dice this question, from people to finances to strategy. So I give Sebastian a chance to join in.
So one thing I always think of, you're right, Lynn, is that there's a lot of different problems you solve. And at a product company, there's a lot of problems too, but consultants, especially at a company like ours that has, expertise across a lot of industries, you get to learn a lot as you go, right? So to me, that's one of the benefits. You're always learning at a software product company as well, but more typically about a narrower set of technologies and a narrower set of expertises, domain expertise, as we call it sometimes, because you're solving that problem, deeply. I love getting paid to go learn about how oil reservoirs are filled one year and then how fixed income, treasuries are traded another year and how to predict when the almond trees will bloom the next year, right? I mean, What a blessing to be paid to do that. That to me is exciting. But the other thing that I think is really different at a consulting company that you just get very little of, I think, at most product companies, is that everyone at a consulting company is on stage. Right? There's a few people at our company that are in very operationally focused roles that may not talk to customers very often, but that is very much the exception. We are all in front of customers all the time and are on stage, right? Sometimes quite literally on a video call, but our every action, as it were, is scrutinized, and we have to kind of perform. It's a services job, right? It's part therapy, it's part delivery, it's part entertainment, it's part imagination. And frankly, that is exciting to me. That's why I'm in it. I think you get a ton of great feedback and empowerment and kind of improvisation when you work with clients. Like when I'm done with a successful scoping or pre-sales meeting, which is what I do most of the time these days, and there's a real high there because I was interacting with people and learning things and pushing myself to go sort of perform. There's definitely a kind of person who hears that and says, oh my God, I don't want to be on a stage. I want to be behind the stage, making the show work, which is also great and important. But to me, that's one of the biggest differences is the opportunity to be on stage, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I guess I'll add to that. And so it is interesting to think of it as a performance. It's also like if I put my product hat on and having worked for both product companies and consultancies, being able to be out there with the clients and with our clients' customers, and everybody has opportunity, just about, with the exception of a few ops roles, as you mentioned, to be in that role. Where sometimes at a product company, there's a few people that get to be on that front line, really touching the customers and getting that input. And as consultants, you're in it, and you're in there with the client, and often the client's customers, facing all the time and learning and hearing kind of firsthand, like what's going on in their market, how should we be addressing that, right? And you're sort of at the front line of being able to soak it all in and get that information, as opposed to in a product company, there are some people whose role it is to do that, and then everyone else kind of is away from that front line, often kind of buffered from it. And depending on what you have appetite for, I love, of course, being on the front line and digging in there, and actually being out in the market, which isn't for everybody. But I think that's also one of the great things about, sort of the performances you put is the you're performing, but you're out there also really digging into the market,
you're
and
seeing
users, and yeah.
Well, and the other thing I'll add that I think you learn a lot at a consulting company is you become very, our consulting company builds software products. So, a lot of the actual things we do day to day are the exact things people go do at a product company. They're exactly the same because we're all building software products. But I have in my career really gotten such an appreciation for pace. Right. There are some things we do at Expero that have to be done in 4 weeks because we're telling a story and there's just no time to talk about code quality. Right. That's not a thing. It's about storytelling and it's about imagination and understanding the problem and just surviving by your wits. And then there's some things where we support real fire breathing systems for 4 years and go all the way to the ends of the earth on quality and memory management and keeping the code clean and, support and being exposed to all those different paces of product imagination and product development and knowing how to use them as a tool, I think is actually a bit of a superpower that consultants have that is often sort of missed at a product company because product companies are, usually have a small group of people that's in charge of some of the early prototyping and storytelling and a much larger group of people that is doing, the building. Now, the smaller your startup is, the more it feels like the stuff I'm talking about. But that variety of pace and engagement and becoming good at using the right kind of team and the right kind of speed to solve a problem, I think is a big difference too. Mm-hmm. This sounds fun. We should work at a company like this, Lynn. I like I like what you're saying here.
It's great for growth too, right? Because it's consulting is equal parts actually building and knowing sort of the tech or the design parts of it, but also the human aspects, right? The getting on the front lines, talking to people. It's equal parts communication. Figuring out, reading a room, seeing how things are going, suggesting, backing up, taking that feedback in, suggesting again. Not taking things personally. Things like that. It really helps you grow more. Horizontally, breadth-wise.
I think so.
It's great. It puts you. It constantly puts you out of your comfort zone. Because you're at the front lines with your tools, excited, and sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, but you're there and you're ready to do it.
Yeah. I think there's also a downside that we should mention, which is one of the classic digs against consultants in the software development space is they come and they go, right? So that can be a weakness of the model, which is someone has paid for 9 months for someone to come in and go kind of build a version of this system, and then off we go. And of course, we think we did a great job, and maybe we even did a great job, but then we're gone. And I don't know if you've ever called a plumber, but the plumber's first job is to say the last plumber screwed it up, right? I mean, that happens in software too, where a team then gets built to take that product forward and like, oh, those consultants, they thought they were so great. They did this and they didn't really understand. And it may be true. We may not have really understood because we were there for a very brief period of time. So I'm always most excited about the opportunity to work on a really large project over a large time scale or with the same client. And as we've been fortunate to do at Expero, we work with some folks for years at a time. And that lets you make sure you've got that skin in the game and you're there long enough to really make sort of meaningful, lasting contributions. I think that's sort of the dark side of being a consultant. Is sometimes you're put on stage in a situation where you can be dinged for not knowing everything because you were there such a brief period of time. That's probably one of the downsides of being in this business.
The Bobs from Office Space really set that stereotype.
We're not supposed to talk about downsides, right? It's all fun and light and flowers.
Yeah.
Well,
but I'll add, I think what's kind of like assumed in what we've been talking about also is, as you mentioned, we run dangerously close to the sun, let's say, of almost being a product company. We do build products for ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. And as consultants, we're usually building products for people. So we don't have to just be really focused on only writing the best, coming in and fixing the SQL or that integration to SAP or whatever it is, right? Like we get to, as we perceive it, do a lot of the fun and really cool stuff where you're bringing a whole product to market or modernizing something, doing something cutting edge, but it's the whole solution. And yes, we may need to write some better queries and fix that database or whatever it is around it, but there's a means to an end of being able to light up a whole new experience or a bunch of new features and functionality, and we get to do both, which is I'm realizing as we're talking, and I'm thinking about other people I know that do consulting, and sometimes unfortunately how myopic they have to be, and just like really they get to do just one piece and then off into the ether it goes for someone else to pick up that gets to really bring the solution to market. And the fact that we get to do all that, as I'm listening to us talk, I'm like, that's still pretty special, like the way that we actually do get to focus a lot on product, and it's just like one little piece, even though we are a consultancy, right? Like and it or consultancies like ours, I should say, that that do that. So.
Yeah. I think that really speaks to kind of like the unique blend of talent that we have here at Expero. Just that we have the kind of people who are able to do that and hop across kind of different disciplines and maybe not be an expert in both disciplines, but know enough to like hit the ground running and be able to have that communication. But so I guess the question that comes out of that is how do you hire for a culture like that? Or like how do you as you grow the company, because we've grown a lot since I joined, as you kind of grow the company, how do you make sure that it stays together and continues to be what you want it to be?
Oh man, what a brilliant question, Jesus. I don't know. You tell me. I agree. That's probably one of the hardest problems that we face. So I think one of the most important answers is to how do you hire people is that you have to start with great people. And, this is pretty common. People talk about working in consulting or working in industry. Sort of the stereotype is a lot of the people in consulting are sort of more switched on or better at their jobs or whatever. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but that's the impression. But I think that talent recognizes talent, right? So when we go interview someone or talk about the kind of work we do, like we are in this conversation, or showing demos of what we do, I think people identify with the kind of work we do first. They'll say, oh, that's interesting. I would love to be able to build something at that pace or at that scale or solve that kind of problem, right? And they'll self-identify as being ambitious enough or creative enough to go tackle a problem like that, or wanting to learn enough to be able to go do that. And then we put some thought into our recruiting process to make sure that recruits talk to enough people to get an idea of the skills, that the people they'll be working with have. And that gets to the root of kind of how we approach interviewing and recruiting, which is, all the science shows that most interviews are actually bad, almost worse than not having them, because they tend to reinforce, people hiring people like themselves and hiring for confidence instead of skill and such. So aside from some light upfront screening to separate sort of bozos out, because there are still people who apply for jobs that, they're not qualified for or whatever, very small minority you still have to worry about. We really want to get to work with a person as quickly as possible. And I think that helps us do two things when we're hiring people. We can evaluate someone in a more natural environment by working with them. Hey, let's solve this problem together, as opposed to let's whiteboard some code, right? That doesn't happen in real life, right? No matter what we're building, we're never writing code on whiteboards. So, or doing, design on whiteboards as a final deliverable. So we give someone a problem to go design or to go code, and then we'll work with them for several hours after that to improve it together. And that has helped us perform our function of, are you a good match for this company? Do you have the talent or the opportunity that we're looking for? And helps them understand, gosh, I really liked working with Jesus or Kareem or whoever it was when I did that interview. And that's the kind of person I'd like to work with. So I think there's a lot of detail about who we look for and why we look for them. Maybe you can talk about, Lynn, but I think that's how we get people unified around the mission, is because they self-identify with the kind of stuff we're doing and then identify with the people that they're working with. And then once they're here, it's usually pretty easy. They say, gosh, I want to keep working with those people. And then if they leave, they often come back because they say, wow, turns out those were the people.
Yeah, nice to piggyback on that. Absolutely. Like the people are the number one thing. And I was just in an interview yesterday, and they asked, well, what's the thing that still keeps you, excited about Expero or whatever? Is it this tech or that tech? Or it was a lot about the technology. And I said, it's the people. That is the number one thing. Technologies come and go, but like having our great people, that's what gets me up every day. Is like I'm super excited to jump in and start working with all these people. Like every one of you that I've every time I'm in a meeting with you, I learn something, right? And that's just awesome to be able to do that every single day. The other thing I'll touch on is once people are here, culture. So we pay quite a bit of attention to our culture, and not just how, I don't know how many vacation days does somebody get. Yes, all that stuff's important, but I think we have set a tone of what we do is pretty amazing, and a lot of heavy lifting and whatever your core competency is, but we balance that with an equal amount of fun, right? And we've been over the last couple of years, especially, and some folks on this call, Kareem, Phil, Jesus, Johnny, you guys have spearheaded all of these special groups that kind of added to our culture, right? So it's everything from like costume contests and swag contests, right, to like trivia days and gaming hours on Fridays and coffee times and getting together, and like we make sure that there is a people aspect. And I think we've done really a particularly good job also in considering the remote aspect. So what we haven't talked about at all is we've been remote long before the pandemic. So we've had people all over the US with hubs in Austin and Houston, but all over the US and then in Tenerife and other parts of the world. And so, I think, as small companies go, we've kind of hit a sweet spot on trying to be remote. I'm sure there's lots of things we could do better, but also being inclusive. And so I'd love to hear from you guys who are spearheading a lot of those culture things, like thoughts on that, or, other things related to kind of what we're talking about, the people and the culture here.
Yeah, I second, or I guess third, that it really is the people. Like when people ask me when I'm, interviewing, why have you been here so long? Like the number one hands down reason, are the people that we get to work with. They're fun from the very first day you join and get to work with them. They're respectful no matter how junior or senior you are. You get to learn from them continuously. And it's like the people aspect is really an unstated and also understated benefit of, working here. It's like not something you'll see in your, monthly payroll or, health insurance. You won't see a line item for it. But like really the people and the culture we've, developed here is, I would say, one of the best benefits of working here. It's just amazing.
Let me say, though, that it's actually pretty hard, going back to how's a consulting company different? Because I think if you're at a product company, if you're big enough, there's multiple missions, and big companies have their own issues. But, in a sense, you're all on one goal. You're all building this product and serving people with it. At a consulting company like ours, we have a shared mission that I think people understand pretty well. We go solve really interesting problems and build software solutions that are kind of at the limits of what can be done, right? We're pushing a lot on technology and usability and analytics envelopes. Great. We all kind of have that shared ambition that makes people identify with what we do. But the truth is, at any given time, we're working on 20 different things because we got 20 different clients. And actually, I think it takes a conscious effort, which, Lynn, I agree. I think we've done a good job, but I always feel like it's not good enough, because the natural tendency at a company like ours is for people to be identifying with that small mission. And you and me, Lynn, probably see it the least because we see everything as leaders of the company, whereas people on individual client engagements may work for 3 months or 6 months focusing on that client's mission, which is interesting and exciting and all that stuff, and then wonder, gosh, what are my buddies doing? What's happening over at client X, or what is Johnny doing designing over in capital markets? What is that all about? So in my mind, most of the effort I feel like I've put into making sure we have mechanisms in the culture to share that vision Jesus asked about are about making sure we share the stories of what we're building. So like every 2 weeks we have our all hands meeting, and we always have people presenting about what they've done, because that's an opportunity for someone on team A to find out that someone on team B did something really cool. Maybe they need to go meet that person. Maybe they need to ask about that technology. And in that way, as we share each other's stories, we can kind of identify with each other. And I think without a lot of conscious effort to do that, and some of what we call special interest groups where developers kind of go more in depth on some stuff they're doing, or designers, share that week's interesting designs, it'd be really easy for it to just kind of feel like a little factory. Like, oh yeah, I worked on this client for 3 months. That's like the bad end case you're trying to avoid. You want to have it all mixed together, so we're all always better for having done so much stuff.
Yeah, I think that's helped by what Lynn was saying, similarly to having a strong company culture. Like having situations not only for us to mix and get to hear what other people are working on day to day, or projects that they're having issues with, like in the special interest groups, but even just having opportunities for people to find things that they have in common, maybe outside of work. Finding ways to mix and, getting to know your coworkers who, we're a very dispersed company. There are people all over the world, but you still have stuff in common with the people who are over in Europe working crazy different hours from you, and creating those organic opportunities, whether it's a goofy trivia night or a costume contest for Halloween, or, whatever it may be, finding those kind of just human ways to create camaraderie, I think is really, really valuable, and leads to those opportunities to get to learn from each other much more naturally, I would say.
That's right. It's much more natural to go have fun with someone, have a meal with someone. And we do bring everyone together in person every January, right? Except last year, to facilitate that. But I don't think anyone's going to stay at Expero because they had a cool coffee break or had beer with someone at a nice steakhouse, right? Like those are just natural human technologies that put humans together. The point of putting them together is for us all to kind of share in the skills and achievements we've had, and, get better at them. And that's what makes people happy, is working with other people. So it takes work for us to make those connections happen because of the natural tension in a consulting company to tear people out into these client engagements.
So we've been looking kind of internally at what we do as a company and what kind of makes us us. But now I kind of want to talk about some external stuff. One thing I've always been impressed by is our ability to land really big clients, relative to our size, at least. Like we tend to punch above our weight a lot. And so it'd be awesome to hear your thoughts on like how we manage to do that, or the kinds of things that make us unique to be able to actually do that.
Well, in part, that's an indictment of our modern system where there's no meaningful antitrust enforcement. And so the big guys do all the work, but maybe that's a topic for a different kind of podcast. Lynn, what do you think? Why do we land these big guys? Why do, really great consulting companies, for instance, even find us to be a useful ally to them, or, big research groups, big product groups? What do we have to offer the 100,000 person company?
So continuing on our previous thread, I mean, people. So we'll put that at the top of the list. I do think our people make a big difference. Where often, as Sebastian was saying, with consulting, it's always the last people clearly screw this up. The people are going to come in and fix it, and there's some truth to that. Sometimes, most of the time, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes we're pulled in. Companies have been trying to solve certain problems on their own for quite a while, and they reach out because they believe we have a particular, sometimes a more bespoke expertise, or just we have all of these different skills that work together under one roof, right? And so they believe we can come in, as we do, and accelerate them. And so, solving some of those hard problems that people have been trying to chip away at, and maybe, we get in there and are kind of known for certain things and can go in and do that. I think that's one enabler. We have great partners as well. So there are some partners that get us to enable us to punch above our weight and get us into rooms we otherwise maybe wouldn't be in, because we are partnered with them, maybe in a consulting capacity, maybe it's in a technology capacity where they're bringing certain technologies to bear that we have expertise in, or even reselling some of our technology, right? That lands us in the room. So there's lots of different tactical ways that we do it, but I do think an overarching is still the people and our capability to deliver across disciplines, with everybody kind of firing on all those cylinders and being able to come in and do things that companies have not been able to either accomplish on their own, or with previous groups that might have tried to tackle some similar problems. But I don't know, Sebastian, what do you think?
Yeah, well, so I think there's actually a couple pretty simple things that help you do that. It's just that you need remarkable people to do those things that sound simple. So one of them, a great example, partners, right? Let's just use a concrete example. OpenFin is an interesting technology provider on Wall Street. Doesn't really matter what they do, but they've deployed a very interesting and useful solution out to hundreds of thousands of users in major banks. Well, gosh, we know a lot about financial services and capital markets, but we're just little old Expero. Who knows anything about us? Well, in that case, it's a wonderful pairing, because OpenFin already is in all these places and can facilitate introductions, but their job is to build their product. Their job is not necessarily to solve the problem of the day over at large bank X. Our job is to solve problems. So that partner network of technologists and other kinds of companies is the way we get in. So it's just a simple mechanical thing. Go find partners that are complementary to you. But there's a lot of art in working productively with those partners, making it a win-win situation, right? Making sure they get something out of it, making sure you get something out of it. And that, like, do we like their software? Do they like our people, right? That can be hard to get right, but basically just find good partners. And then the second thing is having that ability to use a group of people to tell a story. I think that's what's missing so much. Big companies have big problems, and they don't need like one person to come in and code something up or draw their one screen or fix that one little Python notebook. That's not really their problem. Usually, if a big company is going outside and asking for help, they have a big ambition. They need to go, utilize their hydroelectric dams more effectively. They need to go fix an entire corner of the bond market. They need to make, California's almond harvest more productive, right? Like, these are the kinds of problems we're solving. And you don't win a deal like that by showing someone a database table, right? You have to tell a story. We can use your highly sophisticated demographic data combined with advanced analytics and great storytelling technology to help you fill your university class with the sort of diverse and ambitious and interesting and able to pay students that you're looking for, right? That's not a story about a database, and it's not a story about, machine learning method number 107. It's a story about filling the university class or making the almond crop better. And you can only tell that story with people from lots of different areas of expertise, designers and developers and analysts and product people. So it's pretty simple. Just go tell the story. But it's pretty hard because you need to kind of all sing from the same book. I think that's how we do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to being consultants, being able to tell those stories, right? Just as you were giving examples there, where it's not about selling that particular database or selling skills around, hey, well, we can do something with this graph database. We have all these great skills. It's about the story of what that's going to enable, right? And you got to get, as a consultant, that part of the performance is getting good at telling those stories, because some people in the room will care about the technology. Other people will care more about, maybe the business analytic that they're going to move, but everybody comes together and understands the story. Right. And so whenever we can put that out front, and then our role and our partners' roles and our individual contributor roles, whatever, to light up that story, it's a great point. That's definitely one way that, we've gotten to be able to kind of punch above our weight, is the magnitude of the stories that we and our partners and other individuals are able to light up.
But part of it's really, being invited and just getting the foot in the door. And then there's the other aspect of why a lot of our clients keep bringing us back for larger and larger projects, right? And so helping us in that regard as well. And it's really twofold. One is, we've been told, hey, we want you guys to work on this because we like working with you guys, right? You feel like you're a part of the team. You bring lots of good feedback. And that's the sort of the human, the people aspect, yet again, right? common theme throughout, right? It's basically they love the people that they work with, and so they want to continue that relationship, and it's that relationship building part of it that they enjoy. And then the other part is, hey, we don't just talk about our work, we show it, right? And once they see what we can do, and such short time frames and like the vagueness areas that we work in, it really impresses them. They want to see more and more of it. They can't get enough. And so both of those things helped, not just get us in the door, but really help keep growing that relationship and that engagement.
Yeah. I guess I'll add to that one. It's kind of a little bit more tactical, but there's different ways to tell a story. And I think one of the things that we do and that we have in common with several of our partners is sort of this show and sell approach to telling a story, right? So a story sounds good and you get people to unify over that, but being able to quickly put together that vision, even in a low fidelity way that brings something more concrete to the table, right? So it might be a few screens kind of strung together. It might be a great data visualization of how we imagine, the prediction to roll out of the almond harvest or whatever it is, right? But we marry some concrete things, some visuals, some wireframes. Maybe it's standing something up in a notebook, like a Jupyter notebook or whatever. Whatever that is, to bring that concreteness to the story and sort of illustrate it, if you will, to further the vision beyond just the words.
So I guess the final question would be, how would you guys summarize who Expero is and kind of how we got where we are today?
Those are really two different questions, aren't they? Right? Because
Yeah.
every organization goes through a journey. We're actually 20 years old this fall. And if I told you what we are now, which I'd be happy to take a shot at, it wouldn't be anything like what we were 15 years ago. But I want Lynn to take a shot. I want to hear your answer.
Well, so I agree with Sebastian. What we have grown into today, I think there's some things that are the same. I think the stem cells were there, like on the culture, and this lust for craving the more complex, the really hard problems, the things that really make your brain, chew on the problems to solve them. So I think those stem cells have always been there, and kind of what we've aimed at and how the culture has grown around it, has changed. So I think even though we're a consultancy, it's sort of at the end of we say this kind of a lot, is at the end of the day, we're sort of a product company, but are we building our products, or are we building products for our clients, right? That's what we do. We're sort of the product people. We're the store. We bring stories to life. We bring products to life. That's, I think, a lot of what we do with all of our combined expertise, is a big part of it. All these different disciplines that we've talked about today. And yeah, I guess I'll jog back briefly and touch upon our origin story here, which Sebastian's probably going to do as well. And I think that's one of the things that makes us who we are. So, Expero today is the result of two companies, at least two companies coming together. And that was, my company and Sebastian's company, and other folks we've picked up along the way, where we each kind of had half of a story, sort of, right? And we started to work together, former colleagues, but we worked together. We all the people enjoyed working with each other to be able to light up that entire story, right? So one company could light up the experience and some of the product strategy and the front end thinking of the story, and the other company literally could do all the wonderful development and architecture and mathematics and everything that was needed to bring that story and that experience to life. And we figured out that there was a lot that we had in common on those stem cells, and then together, it was just so much better and so cool that we could actually end to end bring these stories to life and tell these stories, instead of kind of each sort of being a little siloed in the parts of the stories, and the products that we could bring to life. So I think of it as, this great kind of fit together to be able to really fully kind of deliver on those is where we're sort of arrived at today, along with all the great culture things and all the wonderful people that have joined and the additional skill sets as we've grown and as technology has changed. And when we started collectively 20 years ago, there wasn't data science so much as a thing as it is today. We have data scientists, day in and day out driving a lot of things, and development has evolved, UX has evolved, and all those things. So they're very different than, kind of where we started, but we all started out with a lot of the same things. I don't know, Sebastian, jump in anytime.
I have, so I think there's two kind of compact answers for me. One is the external answer, now, which is Expero is a company that helps solve difficult problems, typically for experts, by building amazing software products. And in fact, in a few areas, we have our own software products that are accelerators in that endeavor. So you come to Expero, if you're outside of us, because you've got a really amazing thing that you need to go build. Some cool market you can open, some university that you need to optimize, a country you're trying to defend. There's a lot of really interesting missions that are aided by technology, and we're some of the best in the business at building and delivering the imaginative software products that you need. That's really what we do, is we bring products to life. There's detail, what kind of products, what kind of analytics, what kind of industries, yes, but that's really what we do at our heart. The internal answer, which I think you and I have very much in common, Lynn, is really, we're just kind of building this place because we love being surrounded by like-minded, kind of smart, switched on people and just eating tons of tasty brain food. That's really what it is internally. And so it's consulting, just like any real job. Occasionally we get some clients where the work is not as interesting as it should be. And then we try to move away from them, right? We are always craving and asking, is the work that we're doing interesting and involved and exciting, and let us learn something new or try something new, and are we excited to work with the people that are here? So one of the challenges we have as a company is there's always an opportunity to go partner with someone and hire 300 people to go glue 3 spreadsheets together over and over again, right? And just there's a lot of valuable work, but not tasty brain food. So the internal answer is, I just want to keep adding more kinds of smart people to solve more kinds of interesting and larger problems. That's really all we're here to do. It's just so fun to do that. If being surrounded by smart people to solve a ridiculous variety of problems, sometimes for 3 weeks at a time, sometimes for 3 years at a time, is interesting, I would be remiss not to mention that we are hiring for aforementioned really smart people that want to eat really tasty brain food.